Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second edition of Water and Communications, Young Voices from the Global South. As we know, and we've heard over the last few days, the water and climate crisis is not a distant reality. It is here and now. But many of the people who are on the receiving end of this crisis are not heard, are not seen, and need to be included. We are very happy to have three voices from the Global South with us today for this panel. I want to introduce Gurjit Singh, Research Editor in Environmental Science and one of the editors at One Water. Hadi Toure, International Water Association and Grundfos Young Fellow and co-founder of AFRO, a civil society organization based in Mali. And Somi Chowdhury, co-founder of Awareness 360. Welcome to all of you. Gurjit, I'm going to actually start with you to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing on nature-based solutions, and what you've seen in terms of wisdom coming from places like Rajasthan. Gurjit, can you hear us?
सब तो ही तो बात है लेकिन ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਉਧਰ ਜਾਣਾ
Gurjit, I'll ask you the question again. I wanted to hear more about your background and the work you're doing in places like Rajasthan when it comes to climate solutions from the ground. I think you, Gurjit, if you can hear me, I think you're on mute.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thanks. First of all, I'm extremely grateful that I was invited to talk here, and it's lovely here. So I've been involved with in developing infrastructure for water conservation at the local level as well as the district and city level. So Rajasthan is a unique place in terms of its water scarcity, its geographical location, as well as scanty rainfall and undetermined, unprecedented rainfall in some areas this year. So, and as well as Rajasthan is very famous for its innovative and traditional techniques for water conservation, be it at village level, community level, or personal level. Its johars, its baulis, what we call as stepped wells, are very famous for conserving water in the days when rainfall is scanty and water is less available.
Thanks, Gurjit. We're going to come back to that later because I think it's a critical kind of building point for today's discussion is that there exists knowledge on the ground that has worked for years and can continue to work if used in the right way. Shomi, I'm going to come to you next. Your work with water began with a very personal experience. Could you share with us how this has affected your perception of how capacity building has to reach people who otherwise might not understand the messages being sent on how to take care of water?
Thank you, Arati. Am I audible?
Yes, and now I can see you even better.
Okay, amazing. First of all, thank you for having me. And yes, you're right that unfortunately, my passion for water and sanitation stemmed from the loss of my mother, who died 9 years ago from diarrhea. And that event was a stark reminder about about the role that wash can play in saving lives. And when I was exposed to the harsh reality of how it is not just a problem in my country, Bangladesh, but it's a global problem, I wanted to take action because I didn't want anyone else to go through that pain of losing someone from a preventable disease like diarrhea. So 4 days after my mother's passing, I conducted my first wash talk at an isolated sanitation workers community. And that is how my wash advocacy journey began. And in the last 9 years, through my organization Awareness 360, I have worked with different vulnerable groups and have come to realize that uh, effective capacity building must prioritize reaching those who are often overlooked or neglected. Vulnerable populations like the sex workers community, the sanitation workers, people with disabilities, refugees, they're not only at a higher risk of waterborne diseases, but are also frequently excluded from mainstream initiatives because of different social, economical, or cultural barriers. And my personal experience has taught me that numbers and statistics, while important, don't always create the emotional connection that is needed to drive change. So, storytelling, as I witnessed in my very first Wash Talk, has the power to bridge that gap. Sharing my own story allowed me to connect with my audience at a deeper level, fostering empathy and understanding. So I think this approach has really become a cornerstone of my advocacy efforts as it really humanizes the issues at hand and encourages a more inclusive and compassionate response. Thank you, Arati.
I'm just going to ask you a quick follow-up, Shomi, because when I was watching some of the work that you've done online, one thing that I thought struck me quite concretely was that in addition to the vulnerable groups that often don't have the information and have to look for it, or organizations like yours help them, it was also that people that you would assume would know better actually didn't know how to do certain things that could actually help themselves when it comes to sanitation, when it comes to actually self-care. Could you comment on that?
Yes, absolutely. I think the biggest example we have seen globally is during the pandemic that really highlighted how we are falling behind in wash and very basic things like hand washing, right? And one of the concerns of my team post-pandemic was that will people forget washing hands just because coronavirus is not around anymore? So yeah, like during my journey, I have definitely been surprised by the action or lack of action of different communities. So, for example, we have worked with different schools, underserved schools in the rural areas, but also when we worked in different quite well known schools in the city, even in the capital city, we've seen their knowledge or their access to wash facilities was really quite in dire need to be addressed. So I think it is something that need to be. It's a broad spectrum that we are working with.
And the storytelling cuts across all those different groups. And that's really important
Absolutely.
for what you're doing. Hadi, I'm going to come to you next. Now, two words that I've used a lot, I have to say, during the last few days, and I will continue to use even after the World Water Week: citizen science. And we've been hearing that from Gauravjeet and from Shomi in different ways about what they're saying and what we're going to now put into a different package. Tell us about citizen science, Hadi, and what are you doing with it?
Yes, so hi everyone. Thank you for having me in this panel. I've been doing a lot of research on citizen science, and available literature has shown that the practice of citizen science is more common in European countries, where citizens are highly consulted during water management decision making. Best practices of Western citizen involvement in science are shared during regional fact, in 2020, during the Citizen Science SDG Declaration Conference, a common call was made for making citizen science a key factor of all policies and activities relevant to the SDGs. For myself, at the UN Water Conference earlier this year, I was very inspired due to World Water Film Festival. I learned that filmmaking is a powerful tool, like fellow panelists have said, to provoking thoughts and a ripple effect for behavioral change. Um, at the festival, they screened a documentary that portrays a solution in Lima, Peru, where locals built on ancient Peruvian engineering practices of channeling water in earth bottom filtration channels to prevent water shortages outside the season. So I saw this as an opportunity, a great one, to promote local ownership by recognizing traditional knowledge, which led me to interviews with various people online, but also at conferences like the UN. So these people I interviewed were mainly from the Global South, including Mexico, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Ghana, and Nepal. All had important motivation to value their traditional and ancient knowledge and significantly involve citizens in the scientific research. In particular, my case studies and have demonstrated that this practice is more and more successful in the global south. For example, I found that the Bahir Dar University in Ethiopia is working with citizens for improved land and hydrological management since 2010. Also, like the UNESCO report of 2023 highlights the lack of uptake of citizen science initiatives in decision making. It was very encouraging for me to find that one of my case studies was successful in promoting the uptake of farming recommendations by the Bureau of Agriculture in the Amhara region in Ethiopia.
So, Hattie, it was a little bit difficult to hear, but given that we've spoken before, and this is such an important thing to talk about, can you hear me as I kind of try and summarize what you said? Am I coming across clearly?
Yes.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to try and summarize what you've said so the audience here can, and the audience online, can hear what important work you're doing. And what you've done now is create these case studies in the global south. If I heard you right, Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Nepal, where you're taking local knowledge and citizen science, meaning citizen engagements and announcements and awareness, and putting that into what could be understood, for lack of a better word, a Western science context, and are actually doing peer-reviewed studies about this, one I think that you're publishing shortly. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I think what's really important for us to take from this is that, and we've heard this now in the last 3 days that we've been here, this importance of local knowledge, this importance of indigenous knowledge, increasing the radar to take this into cognizance. But Hattie, what you're showing us is a way this can actually be institutionalized into what is today a very engineering-heavy lexicon in terms of understanding infrastructure when it comes to watershed development and watershed stewardship. I'm speaking to a black screen, just so everyone knows. Hattie, could you hear me?
Yes. Can you see and hear me as well?
I can now. But now the audience has my back, but I think they understand, and that's fine. All yours, Hattie, tell us.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I don't think I
The case
understood.
studies that you've done that are now based on the global south.
Yes.
Previously, most of the case studies, as you said, were in the global north. So we can take what you've done in the global south and replicate and scale the learnings that you've put together.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry for that. The testing went fine, and of course, it had to happen on stage. I hope you
Not
can
a
hear me
problem
well
at
now.
all.
So I see real change happening and paradigm shifts in the global south right now through my case studies, but also through initiatives that I'm currently driving. So discussing with experienced academics, practitioners, and water enthusiasts during my research has encouraged me to start looking at my own region, the Sahel region, and I have discovered a lot of documentation on the Bozo and Sarko ethnicities that live along the Niger River in Mali and Niger, and they are considered as the water masters. And our organization called Afro Partner with other youth organizations in Mali and Niger, and we received 100,000 euros funding from IHE Delft to conduct citizen science activities to promote water quality in Mali and Niger, while still involving the Bozo and Sarko ethnicities. I mentioned the Citizen Science and SDG Declaration Conference in 2020. And one of the key recommendations from this conference was to adapt funding mechanisms to small scale experimentation. And funding opportunities are lacking in Mali and the Sahel in general because of conflicts existing. And the fact that our initiative is able to collaborate with big institutions like IWA, IHE Delft, and Grundfos show that the paradigm is shifting and the youth are in the driver's seat to conduct the change that we want to see happening. And we also see a shift in the citizen science approach itself. In one of my interviews, I learned about the concept of validating remote sensing data and automatically collected data with citizen science. And this completely changes the narrative and the concept completely empowers citizens who are actually the ones that are being validated by the scientific community. And I think that's really important.
The messages that you're putting across also for the audience here, that we're listening to these three voices of the Global South and of course also youth voices. And what we're talking about is local knowledge, storytelling, and kind of going back to what works. Gurjit, I want to come to you next. And of course you started the discussion today talking about the bowels and the water infrastructure in Rajasthan. What are you seeing as the value of kind of lifting this up for larger attention, both within India, the Global South, and of course international dialogue? Gurjit, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I couldn't
Yeah,
hear.
there you are.
Okay, so I think it's important to learn from small scale experiments and implement that on a larger scale. We've seen that basically water has the tendency to move with gravity. So water collects anywhere in the low-lying lands. What we in Rajasthan do is protect that water which collects in low-lying land and use that in the days when there is no rainfall. So what I've seen is people have been implementing that, not just Rajasthan, the nearby states, the Punjab as well. Um, Wells have been created to save water and also recharge groundwater. So we can use that knowledge and combine that with modern technology and implement that on a larger scale for even the global north, which sometimes we say that doesn't have any water scarcity issues. But we saw that Europe faced severe water scarcity this year. So we can learn from simple and simple experiments in the global south and implement that in the developed nations as well.
I'm going to come to this terminology that all of you are using, or especially you, Gurjit, right now in terms of global north and global south. But before that, I want to come to Shomi because, of course, Shomi, what Hadi and Gurjit are saying in terms of touching local stories. And you mentioned the power of storytelling as well. How do you want to take the case studies that you're working with at the local level? How do you want to amplify that message?
Thank you,
Shomi?
Arati, for the question. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, so I think we also have, us as global youth, we also have a responsibility to bridge that gap between the bottom and top of the pyramid. So when I'm working at the grassroots level, when I'm working on these case studies, it is also my responsibility using those communication tools and storytelling and all the different that we were talking about earlier to really bring those messages forward in places where decisions are being made. Just like this World Water Week forum where we are talking about our work, and hopefully, it can steer more collaboration and partnerships among the stakeholders who are present in these forums. The water conference was a big momentum for us as well. So I think these are different key places where we can bring these narratives around water and share the examples that we are seeing at the grassroots level.
I think that's a really important point, break these narratives around water. So now I'm going to address the three of you. You're on a panel called Global South, Young Voices. I'm going to ask each one of you, you have inherited frameworks of understanding the water paradigm, as well as the climate paradigm, and as well as kind of interaction on a geopolitical level. How valuable to you is this concept of the global north and the global south? And Gurjit, I'd like to start with you. I think you're on mute.
Okay.
You're
Sorry,
back with
it
us.
happens again. I believe. Okay, so in my opinion, this is a very perplexed idea of having global north and south divide. We've been growing up with tales from the west versus tales from the east, how eastern civilization is different from the western one, and now there's global north and south in front of us. Um, uh, I was very surprised to find that New Zealand and Australia don't come, but they're clearly below the equator line. So my
Gorgeous. I'm
question
actually going
is,
to ask you
how
to
come
say that
I'm
again.
not very.
It got disconnected right in the middle of that sentence about Australia, so if I could ask you to say that again.
Okay, I was saying that I was very surprised to find that Australia and New Zealand don't comprise the global south while they're clearly below the equator. So this whole concept of global north versus south is just the developed versus the developing nations or the underdeveloped ones. So
So
we
how
need to change the terms now.
you want to see a change in those terms to make it more valuable
Yes,
to
I
your
do.
everyday? Great. Hattie, I'll come to you next.
I pretty much agree with Sarabjit about what he said about the divide. I think um, just for me participating in conferences, I have learned about global south and north then because back then when you're in the field, you don't necessarily see the bigger divide and sometimes you get lost in the big words and lose focus on what's mostly important.
So Hattie, I'm going to repeat what you said just so the audience can hear you. So you're saying the divides are largely unnecessary and you lose the larger picture because of them. Is that right? Great. Show me over to you.
Thank you. I think this framework around the division between the global north and south, um, it has some positive sides in the sense that it has historically drawn attention to the unequal distribution of wealth, technology, and influence. It has, highlighted the structural challenges that many countries in the global south face, such as limited access to education or clean water or healthcare. But I think this framework sometimes can perpetuate a sense of superiority or accomplishment in the global north, overshadowing ongoing struggles and inequalities across these regions. So, for example, I have sometimes noticed that there's a perception of the north as having solved most problems. And this not only ignores the persistent social justice issues in the global north. For example, we all know about the Flint, Michigan crisis, water crisis, where the impacted population was predominantly Black. And then there's also so many indigenous groups in North America who are also suffering from a shortage of water. So I think this neglects these nuanced realities in both global north and south. And many regions in the global south have also made remarkable strides in development and innovation, and they do possess the knowledge and the solutions that could benefit the entire global community. So I think at the end of the day, what is important is to once again realize that SDGs apply to all and every country. So sharing knowledge, resources, and expertise is crucial for achieving the SDGs. And this can occur in various fields, especially in research and development. I don't think innovation should be confined to any one region. It should be a collaborative effort that draws on the strengths of diverse communities and perspectives. So I think we should move beyond the limitations of the North South framework and recognize the shared responsibility.
Sherm, I'm going to repeat what you said again. Just we heard you very clearly, but I'm just going to repeat it so everyone appreciates the value of what you just said, which is to move beyond frameworks that limit engagement and collaboration and sharing of knowledge becomes really critical. I'm going to come back to Gurjeet on that issue, given the way you started, Gurjeet, saying that you didn't realize Australia and New Zealand were part of the global south. I mean, part of the global north. You thought they'd be part of the global south. What do you want to see in the work that you're doing? What do you want to see going forward in terms of recognizing and operationalizing this collaboration?
I think that we are very clear on how different countries are variably vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change. So those countries who have the funds to help others should put their hands out for helping the underdeveloped or poor countries who face the brunt of climate change. So this is the collaboration I would want to see in the future world.
And how will that take place? So the work that you're doing right now in India, in Rajasthan, in Punjab, I believe you said as well, how would you like that to be leveraged? Because of course now that sharing is happening nationally and maybe within the SAARC countries as well. What would you like to see with this information?
A case study in Punjab, we saw that when we plant mini forests with the indigenous species of that area, even in Punjab, there are different types of climates. Some are arid and some are very wet climates in the hilly areas of Punjab. So we can learn from the case studies in these areas and implement that overall in the world. For example, using indigenous trees as well as combining that strategy with the wells and baulis in Rajasthan, we can construct a very robust water conservation technology as well as a forested area in other parts of the world as well.
So I'm going to ask you one last question. How do you get leadership to see and implement, institutionalize the findings that you're coming together with?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
How did you get leadership? So you have your case studies on the ground with really important conclusions. How would you suggest that leadership take cognizance of your findings and institutionalize them?
We need stronger media that voices our concerns and our results to the major audience, so that the stakeholders or the ones in power can listen to us.
The role of the media becomes critical here to make that message
Yes.
heard. Absolutely. Hattie, I'm going to ask you, of course, the work that you're doing, the case studies that you've developed that are in the Global South, which are a minority of the case studies in citizen science. How do you want to scale them?
I hope you hear me now. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Something that I've noticed, especially in the West African culture, is that most of our knowledge and values are transmitted orally, and sometimes we miss um, we miss the floor on all the scientific advancements in water and climate development. And what I would like to really see more is more citizen science initiatives in the Western African region. And I would like to see them more documented through film, because that's easier for people that do not have access uh, uh, to reports or that are not literate. We can translate the movies in local language, and this is how we can reach the maximum level of people, and we can promote local ownership in solving water and climate issues.
I'm going to ask all of you one last question before we close the panel. So you're on stage with us right now at the World Water Week 2023. If you've been following us online, you'll have heard that a lot of the discussions have been about diversity, inclusion, representation, equity, and of course, moving faster. I want to ask you if you could say one thing you want to see discussed at World Water Week 2024, what would that be? Shomi, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you. I think we often miss out on the profound connection between water and cultural preservation. I don't think we talk about it enough, because water isn't solely a matter of access and functionality, but it also holds profound cultural significance within different societies worldwide. And it's intertwined with safeguarding traditions and spirituality and the very core of communities. So I think in discussions about water management and sustainability in the next World Water Week, we should recognize and honor this cultural dimension, as it adds a very rich layer of understanding to our approach and solutions. Thank you.
Thanks, Shomi. Gaurav, I'll come to you.
A topic of interest for me in particular is how we can use faith and belief systems to pump the conservation strategies. I've been very impressed with this topic and doing research on this lately.
Thank you, Gurjit. Hadi, last word to you.
Yes, so I've done a lot of research so far about citizen science and discussed with a lot of people. And for next year, personally, I would like to come back on stage and testify with the people I work with to show that the examples of citizen science that we talked about really work in my region of Mali and Niger.
Thank you so much. That's water and culture, belief systems, and more evidence on citizen science. We're saying that to the audience here today and to the organizers of the World Water Week, and I hope you see that on stage next year. Thank you so much for being with us today, and for all the audience here, we're going to give you a warm hand of applause. Thank you so much.